guys, and welcome back. On last week's show, I showed you just quickly how to make spinning tops on your lathe, and I hope that some of you took that short video and expanded on it and tried your own tops for the kids that you know in your life. It really is a great project. But on this week's show, we're going to be talking about biscuit joiners. You know, as a guy that's been doing woodworking for a long time, sometimes you take it for granted, the things that you know and the things that other people know. And what I mean by that is, a while ago I put out the video with the folding chair slash stool build, and I used a joiner in that video. But I never showed the process of actually using the tool. And someone made a comment to me of, you know, that's a great way to join the pieces, but I haven't got a clue what you're talking about because I don't have one and I don't know how to use one. So I thought, video idea, why not put it together and show you the basic setup for using your biscuit joiner, or as in some people call them, plate joiners. I'm not going to get into the fancy joinery of these things. If you want to get further into fancy joinery on angles and what have you, then knock yourself out and check out in your manual. It'll tell you all you need to know. But we're just going to do a basic butt joint today, and I'm going to run through some of the basics for you. Let me just start off with the tool itself. This is my joiner, and I have a Freud JS100A. And you know what? I got a great deal on it. I got a good price on it. And I've been happy with its performance right from day one. So whichever joiner you have, I mean, this video is the basics and it should apply to all of them. So what you have here in the basic tool is you have the motor, you have your working surface or your guides, and you have your support handle on top, and as well inside, let me just push this guide back, you have your cutter disc. I don't know if you can see that in there, but that is your cutter disc right here. There are these cutter discs available for handheld routers. If you can't afford one of these machines or can't justify it for the amount that you use, they do sell router kits with just that blade, so that you can use your handheld router to do the exact same thing. So this is basically the tool. Mine has a dust chute here, which of course attaches or has a bag that attaches on it. And if you have this Freud joiner, let me give you a piece of advice, because I found that for it shooting dust into the bag at the beginning, it was useless. But inside this chute, there was a bar that went straight up and down, and it was kind of a support bar to make this a little more rigid. Well, what was happening is that the chips were hitting that bar, and then they were binding up inside this chute, and none of the chips were getting actually into the bag. So I got in there with a sharp 1/4-inch chisel and basically cut that bar out. And as soon as I did, now about 90% of all the chips from this particular machine go into the bag, as opposed to jamming up in the chute and then just going everywhere. So if you do have one of these the Freud JS100As, that's my advice to you, is cut that supporting post out of this chute, because it's just going to get in your way. So we've looked at the components, if you want to call it that, of the joiner, and as you can see, it's really nothing special. It's a pretty simple machine, and further on in the video we're going to get into how it actually is used. But these are the biscuits, and I use 3 particular sizes in my work. I use a number 0, and that's the smallest one here in my hands, and then a number 10. And then this is a number 20, the largest one that I use. And I'll just hold them up to the camera so you can see these things. If you should ever get them mixed up and not sure which one you have, don't worry about it, because the number is actually stamped on each one, with this being a number 20. And what these are is kind of, they're a composite of wood chips and glue and whatever, and they're all pressed and cut into these little funny shapes. And their job is, when the biscuit joiner cuts slots in your stock, these little units get glued into the slots and give rigidity between the two planes of the board. Keeps them from sliding up and down. Now, it will not prevent them from sliding this way. There is a little bit of play there, and you have to be careful when you're using these biscuits that you're not relying on these to perfectly align your piece, because there is a little bit of play. But on the horizontal plane, they will help you greatly in lining up your stock. So their job here, as I said, is to fill those slots that's cut by the biscuit joiner, and then the water from your wood glue is soaked into these units and they expand. And when they expand, they fill that gap, and they actually provide quite a strong joint between the two pieces of stock. All right, to demonstrate how these little biscuits expand, what I've done is I've taken one and drilled a little hole in it, and this is a number 10 biscuit, and I've put a 1/4 nut on the end of it just to weigh it down. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to take a measurement of the thickness of this biscuit, and I'll try to show you there. This biscuit is 5/32 of an inch thick. So I'm going to take this biscuit now, and I'm going to drop it into this bowl of water. It is like Bill Nye the Science Guy here. He's like Kembo the Science Guy. But anyway, we're going to drop it in here, and if that nut's not enough to make it sink, then I'll add another nut or two. But anyway, we're going to drop it in. Oh, and it fits perfectly there. Look at that, just hanging in that jar of water. Almost looks like I planned that. Look at that hanging in there. Anyway, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave this biscuit in there, and the water here, although the viscosity is of course much thinner than your glue, this is just for a demonstration, and when we finish at the end of the video, I'll pull this out and we'll use the calipers and we'll take another measurement, and I'll show you how much it expands. It's not huge amounts. It's not going to be an inch thick, but it'll still be doing its job. So we're going to come back a little later in the video and take a measurement of this. Alright, so the first thing that you want to do is you want to decide what size biscuit that you're going to use. And in my particular case, just for this demonstration, I'm going to be using a number 10. So I'll just show you that there. See that there, the number 10 written in that? Hope you can see that. Anyway, so this is our number 10 biscuit. How do you set up your machine? Well, on this particular unit, let me just remove this dust bag for clarity. On this particular unit, there is a dial right here. And this dial has numbers on it. It has a 0, a 10, a 20, and it has common sizes, of course, for different sizes of biscuits. And let me just show you guys here. I'm mucking around with this, but just to show you a test on-off of the switch to make sure that it's unplugged is always a good idea. You've heard me say that before. Anyway, that little dial, you rotate it and to whatever size of biscuit you're using. And in this case, I'm using the number 10, and I'll just hold that up so you can see, hopefully, that I have that set at number 10. And what that does is it's a depth stop. So it controls the amount of plunge that this machine is going to give. I don't know if you can see that there, but I'm plunging it inward, and depending on how deep I need it for the biscuit, because they have different dimensions, this controls your depth stop for it. And of course you have a fine-tune adjustment right here. So first thing you want to do is you want to set for the size of biscuit that you're going to use. The next step is, of course, you want to know the size of wood that you're going to use. And in this particular case, I have some scrap 3/4. Actually, this is a mistake or an offcut piece from the folding chair slash stool. So we're going to use this. And what we're going to do here is we need to set up the jointer for the thickness of our stock. So in this case, it's 3/4 of an inch. So on our fence, you can see that this fence here adjusts vertically. And there is a scale, a reference scale here. So we'll just loosen this off. Sorry, some guy with a little bit too much strength in his fingers adjusted that. It was me. Anyway, so we've got this loosened off, and this scale now adjusts. And you can see I just adjusted that. So this would be for a rather thick piece, and of course you can adjust it all the way down to, well, I wouldn't suggest that. You'll tear the snot right out of your blade. But you need to adjust for the size of stock. So a 3/4 piece, half of 3/4 is 3/8. So you want to start at the 0 mark, and then you want to mark it at 3/8, or set it rather, at 3/8 of an inch for the fence. And then we're going to tighten down this little adjustment. And now our cutter, which you can see right there, our cutter should be in the middle of our board by adjusting our fence at that 3/8. And we can test it just by holding it up there. And we can see that we're in the middle of that board. So our fence now, or our height adjustment, is set correctly. So far we've got the size of our biscuit set and the size of our fence set. Now, we can get all funky here and start talking about how this fence will set at different angles and all that kind of crap, but I'm not getting into that. This is just the basic operation of the joiner, and like I said earlier in the video, if you want to goof off with these angles and stuff, the machine's fully capable of it and does a great job, but it will not be covered in this particular video. The next stage here that you want to work on is you want to dry fit your pieces together. And here I have 2 pieces, and we're going to pretend, for the sake of this video, that I am going to be joining them this edge to this edge. So essentially they'll be like this. So again, you got to remember, I'm just faking it here on a piece of scrap to show you. But if this were your good piece, you want to mock it up, dry fit it together as I've done here, and then clamp it together. Double check all of your alignment here now. Don't think that it's going to work all great, and you need to double check. So I'm off on the edges. So just for fun, I'm going to move this over just a touch, and then I'm going to clamp it down a bit. So now we have this edge here lined up. This is the way I want my piece joined together, and this is what we're going to go with. What you need to do now is decide where the biscuit is to go. So for my piece, again, it doesn't matter, it's just scrap. I'm going to put it 3 inches in. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a mark there at 3 inches, and I'm going to use a square, and on my piece I am going to mark a straight line. Now this is the important part here. Make sure this line is straight. A crooked line or doing it by hand is not going to help you here. So I'm going to take my square and I'm going to draw a nice straight line right across both pieces. And now I will take these out of the clamp and I'll show you these lines. It's imperative that these lines meet up, that they're straight and that they meet up. And the reason that this is so important is because when you go to use the biscuit joiner, it has guidelines. You can see them here. There's 1, there's 2, there's 3, there's another one inside of here, if you can see that there. But those lines on your biscuit joiner line up with the lines that you just created. And in doing that, you know that this is the center point of where your biscuit groove or your biscuit recess is going to be cut. You've got your line drawn, and there's one more thing that I like to do, especially in an instant where we have almost identical mating pieces. Because the line extends out to both sides, you could see where they could get reversed and assembled incorrectly. So just outside of these lines, I like to do like another little tick on either side, and then I know that those pieces go together. There's no mistaking which piece goes where now. If you were to reverse them, these little ticks on the outside don't line up. So the next thing that we need to do now is to go ahead and use our biscuit joiner to cut the recesses for our biscuits. This here is a board that I have now clamped to my bench. And the reason that I have this here is, guys, please, you don't want to hold this piece with your hands while you're trying to use the joiner. So, or the biscuit cutter or the plate joiner. Anyway, what I've got here is a non-slip routing mat, and I have this backer board here clamped to my bench, and this piece here will sit nicely against my makeshift fence. What the process is here is you want to line up your biscuit joiner using the marks that are on your fence, and line those up with the mark that you drew with your square. You hold firmly onto this support handle, and turning the machine on, you then push forward and plunge in one swift motion. You plunge that unit into the wood and then release it. You don't want to push it in and wiggle it around. It's just one smooth plunge and you're done. So I'm going to do it on this piece here, and then what I'll do is I'll try to get a closer up view doing the second piece so you can try to get a better view of that. But what you want to be doing here is paying attention to those little marks that you did, and make sure that you're actually cutting the biscuit on the right side, which will be this side here on this piece, but this side here on this piece. So here we go. Put on your safety equipment, guys, ear, hearing protection and eye protection, and we're going to put on our dust bag here, and we're just going to plunge cut this one recess, and we'll show you how it goes. So line up your mark, get everything nicely lined up there, just like that. Machine goes on. Did you see how quick that was? That was very quick. There was no messing around, it's just plunge, done. And I'll just show you there. There's your hole recessed right in the center of that piece, and it looks good. So now we're going to go ahead and I'm going to cut the recess in its mating piece. Okay, I'm just going to show you this process again. I've readjusted my camera to show you here, and you can see clearly that we have the line here that we marked and our adjustment line right here. So you're going to line up that line, and then right on the inside there's another one there. So you'll line up that line with the one that you made, grab onto your support, and then power on and plunge. And there we have it there. So let's move on over now and have a look at how these things get glued together. Just like all of the other projects that I've shown you, a test fit is still part of the norm, even with biscuits. Things get misaligned, mistakes get made. So the process here, and I'll just sort of dry mock it up so you can see, and then we'll do the test fit in the same step. But you want to coat the surface with glue. You want to place glue inside of the recess for the biscuit, and then the one biscuit gets slid into that recess. And you can see there that it's halfway in, and this is how it sits. And then this side gets glue applied and then placed in the recess. The two pieces are then placed together, making sure that your mating lines align up, and then of course it's clamped. And what you end up there with is a very strong joint. Once that glue is dried, I mean, that's an extremely strong joint. And I mean, it's not holding now, but that's because there's no glue in there. But what we're going to do now is we're going to go ahead and we're going to glue this up. We can see that the test fit is really nice. It's very tight. There are no gaps here at all. And let's go ahead and glue this one up. All right, so just a little bit of regular yellow tight bond sort of thing. Nothing fancy here. And you want to wait for the glue to get down to the end of your bottle. And like I said, glue in the recess and then glue on the surface, just like this. And don't be shy with your glue here, guys. I mean, squeeze out is normal here, and it's going to happen, and that's a good thing. Don't be afraid of a little bit of squeeze out on your projects. And then, just like I said here on the other one, glue in the recess, and then glue on the surface. There's the never-ending controversy here about do you have to put glue on both sides? Well, you know what? I'm not even getting into that. Okay, so there we go. Glue on both sides, glue in the recess, and then from there you place your biscuit into that recess, and you're going to see the ooze out here. Look at that. That's sexy. Okay, and then you put your two pieces together, and again, there's going to be a heck of a lot of squeeze out here. From here, like I said, the play left to right is still there because that's just the way it is with a biscuit joiner. But you want to pay attention now when you're clamping it up to that left to right. Make sure that your lines are still lining up. And you basically clamp her up, let her dry, and clean up your squeeze out before it dries, of course, because there's going to be a lot of it. And what you've got there is one heck of a strong joint that's very difficult to break. So with that being said, that is the biscuit joiner. Okay, so let's take a little trip back here, and we're going to pull this biscuit out of the water. I wish I had longer fingers at this point. There we go. We've got this thing out, and let's just, don't really want to get the water all over my equipment here, but let's just take a measurement. Wow. We are at 11/64. Can you see that there? Let me try to turn it. 11/64. And before, of course, we were at 5/30 seconds. So, I mean, the swelling is not huge, but yet it's enough that it's going to pull that whole joint in. I've never really done that experiment before, and that's kind of neat to know exactly how much it swelled. So there you go. And the swelling is not huge, but yet again, enough to make the joint strong. Guys, I'm going to caution you to not have these biscuits lying around loose in your shop. If your shop is not climate controlled, the moisture in the air will cause them to swell. And on humid days, it will cause you problems. So keep them in an airtight container if you can, if you're in a humid area. Of course, little silica gel packets, you get them in running shoes and that sort of thing. I usually hang on to those and throw them in with them to soak up any moisture that may accidentally get in there. So there you go. And there you have it. The biscuit joiner. Very cool tool. And it definitely has a place in the shop. And you know, I've only shown you the basics today, but there's a lot more capabilities of these particular units. Do yourself a favor, if you have one, don't just limit yourself to strictly 90-degree butt joints. They can do all kinds of things, even as far as picture frame miters on larger frames. This could be your joinery method and can really strengthen a frame, as opposed to a spline, which is visible, kind of like an invisible spline machine here. As far as the bag goes, I gave you guys the advice on trimming out that post, and I'll just show you here on those two cuts. Everything went into the bag. Cutting out that post makes all the difference in the world, so you may want to do that if you've got the Freud. I don't know if the DeWalt or one of the other manufacturers has that post in there or not, but the Freud does. Cut it out. It's useless. So guys, thanks for watching. I hope this has cleared up anything for those of you who weren't sure what I was talking about. And for those of you who have maybe bought a biscuit joiner ages ago and kind of neglected it and put it aside, why don't you take it out and play with it a bit and see what you can do. Guys, thanks for watching, and I'm going to see you again next week with yet another woodworking video.